So actually my first interest was in natural foods. In 1971 I opened a natural and organic food shop in the United Kingdom, and the enthusiasm, or my enthusiasm, was for food and diet as a way to help us improve our health and well-being. And particularly I was interested in an approach that was popular at the time called macrobiotics, which was loosely based on Japanese and Chinese medicine. So I learned a little bit about that and about things like shiatsu, and then that naturally led me into an interest in studying Chinese medicine. So I started studying in 1975. I think it's simple. I think when people are sick, they want to get well. And I'm remembering the words of the old Chinese premier, Deng Xiaoping. He said, it doesn't matter if the cat is black or white, as long as it catches the mouse. So most people turn to alternatives like Chinese medicine because they've tried orthodox medicine and it hasn't helped. So it's really quite simple. They look for alternatives, and one of those alternatives is Chinese medicine. So Western medicine is great. It's made a massive difference to human health. It's excellent at treating many disorders, but it's not perfect. I would say that the approaches of the two medicines are a bit different. Western medicine is very good at treating the manifestation of disease, the symptoms. If you have asthma, you can get good medicines to control the symptoms of asthma. If you have cardiovascular disease, you can get reasonably good medicine to control it. It's not so effective at treating the root of the disorder. So Chinese medicine is perhaps sometimes weaker at controlling the symptoms, but better at digging up the root, as it were, and therefore creating a greater chance of curing or significantly improving the underlying condition. And the other thing is, there are many problems Western medicine can't treat. Yes, very much. At the moment, right now, I'm editing with others, a big textbook on the treatment of infertility with Chinese medicine. And actually, infertility has been the leading light in showing how the combination of Western medicine and Chinese medicine can produce benefits greater than either of them alone. So certainly in China, when you work with infertility, you use the very best that Western medicine has to offer, which is often diagnostically, and where necessary, surgery, and sometimes medication. But the thrust of the treatment is with Chinese medicine, and the two work together really well. There's lots of other examples. I mean, cancer is a good example. In China and increasingly in the West, if you have cancer, it's generally recognized that the sensible approach is to turn to Western medicine to attack the cancer. But the weakness of Western medicine in treating cancer is that the attacking medicine or surgery used to treat cancer can be quite harmful to the body. So Chinese medicine is used to support and strengthen the body to counter the side effects of the cancer treatment and to prolong survival rates quite significantly. I imagine for most of human history, the human life has been full of stress, worry, material values and more. People have lived through all kinds of even more stressful times than we do at this age. And people have always been interested in being well, as they are now. I mean, pick up any magazine, any popular magazine, you have pages about dieting and diets and exercise. There's a great passion out there to find ways to live happier, healthier lives with greater well-being. So I think we do have the interest and we have the capacity, yes. So my book, Live Well, Live Long, is aimed at everybody, anybody who's interested in health. It's not one of these popular books like the 50 Secrets of Health and Happiness. It's slightly more academic, but it is readable, suitable for everybody from Chinese medicine practitioners, any health practitioner, Western medicine or complementary medicine will find it valuable and interesting, and so will the ordinary reader. It's about the 2,500 year Chinese tradition of observing human life, of observing what helps us to be healthy and what contributes to disease. It looks at every aspect of human life, every aspect of our behaviour, and offers often very simple approaches that everybody can follow to improve health, well-being, and increase the length of our life. I think what the YangSheng tradition offers is historically tested approaches to good health. For example, at the moment there's a passion for going to the gym, doing lots of very heavy, very vigorous exercise, running long distances. From the Chinese point of view, this is not necessarily long-term the best thing for health. So in some ways the YangSheng approach differs from the Western approach, but I would say that one of the most sophisticated things about the YangSheng approach is its comprehensive understanding. And when I teach it, I often refer to the 4 legs of the chair. So this chair that I'm sitting on has 4 legs. Because it's got 4 legs, it's stable, it's not going to fall over. If it loses 1 leg, it's not so stable. If it loses 2 legs, it's really difficult to sit on. So we have 4 primary legs of the chair of human health. The first, and possibly the most important, is to look after and cultivate our emotional life. The second is look after our diet. The third is cultivate the body through rest and exercise. And the fourth is sleep. So these 4 are the most important for looking after ourselves. And what we often find when we talk to people about health is they may be very good at 1 or 2 of those. They may be obsessive exercisers, they may eat an obsessively pure diet, but maybe they suffer a lot of stress, they're not cultivating their emotions, they don't sleep enough, and so on. So I think this simple approach of looking at what the core aspects of YangSheng are is very helpful. When I first started studying Chinese medicine, I learned that the unregulated emotions were an important cause of disease. But it was only really when I was investigating and writing this book that I realized how accurate that is, how important it is. So there are 3 aspects I would pick on. The first is that unless we have some kind of integrated emotional life, it's very hard to look after ourselves. Everybody has the experience of suddenly deciding I want to stop drinking alcohol, or I want to stop smoking, or I want to go to the gym every day, or I want to eat less food, whatever it is. They're full of good intentions, and then they find it never happens. So many of us are kind of at war inside ourselves. We have conflicting interests. And one very wise Chinese doctor, Sun Simiao, in the 7th century said one of the difficulties in taking care of yourself, or one reason that people get ill, is that they don't love themselves enough. Because you have to love yourself if you really want to look after yourself. So this is an emotional challenge, quite a big one. The second important thing is the understanding that unregulated emotions are really harmful to the body. If we take one example, perhaps the strongest example, and the one there's been most research in Western medicine, anger. Anger, if it becomes a regular habit, or if it's extreme, is incredibly dangerous. It greatly increases the risk of strokes, of disorders of heart rhythm. It interferes with lung function and capacity. It causes earlier death. People are prone to anger, and it's actually the same right through all the emotions: stress, worry, anxiety. If these become prolonged, we all get them, of course. It's an inevitable part of being human. But when they become set in to our pattern of behaviour, that's when they become harmful. And finally, the third thing about cultivating the emotions is we can do the best exercise in the world, we can follow the best diet in the world, but we're still going to get old, and we're still going to decline, and we're still going to die. And so part of the big picture of YangSheng is developing our wisdom sufficiently to understand and to embrace this reality. And that's one of the biggest challenges that humans face, to know that we're going to get old and we're going to die. Well, as I just said, probably anger is the single biggest harmful emotion. And what's important about anger, it can be harmful not just if it's chronic, repeated anger, but even one single bout of anger can cause problems. So when they investigated stroke patients and asked what was the most significant event in the 24 hours before your stroke, anger, a fit of anger was the most common. As for how long the body can resist harmful emotions or harmful diet or harmful lifestyle, it really depends a lot on the constitution we're born with. Some people are born with a particularly strong constitution. They can live quite bad lifestyles for a long time before it affects them. People who are weaker, born with a weaker constitution, are much more vulnerable. But we should all remember the Chinese saying, before the age of 30, you bully disease. After the age of 30, disease bullies you. Yeah. Well, look, in self-cultivation, in cultivating ourselves, we understand there are external phenomena and internal phenomena. We can't completely control external phenomena. We can't completely control the stress, the traumatic incidents, the pressures, economic pressures in our lives. What we can, to some degree, to control is our internal response. So I think whatever life presents us with, we have the capacity to change ourselves in the way that we respond to it, yes. Okay, very simply, number one, every day we should take some time, even a few minutes, even 5 or 10 minutes, to what you might call return to ourselves, to center ourselves in ourself, You could call it meditation, you could call it mindfulness, you could call it, if you do some slow movement like Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga, you could call it moving meditation, but something where we calm and settle the mind and return to ourself, as opposed to just simply being fully absorbed in exterior events and letting our minds run constantly. So this in itself is very healing, especially if we accompany it with slow breathing. So that's one thing. Second thing, for most of us, we should eat less. Very important way to improve health and well-being. The Chinese have have a saying, eat until you're 70% full. And the third simple piece of advice is keep moving. Keep moving the body. Take the stairs instead of the elevator, walk instead of the bus or the car, ride a bicycle, go for walks, gardening, just as far as possible. This human body was designed, or not designed, but evolved to move almost constantly. That's what our ancestors did. So one of the big causes of chronic ill health is failure to use the body in the way it's been evolved for. Well, there are two common mistakes. The one is, I mentioned, they decide to do something and they stop. I teach Qigong. I have students come once a week and I tell them over and over and over again, Qigong can transform your life, but you have to do it. You have to do it every day. And people often are full of enthusiasm at first, but somehow they fail to practice. So the first thing is, if you find something good, you feel in your heart or your gut that this is good for you, then you have to do it. You have to practice it, whether it's dietary or exercise. The second thing, which is connected to that, is people keep changing. They hear of one idea of diet, maybe a Paleolithic diet, and they follow that for a few weeks, and then they get tired of that and they do something else. And often what they're doing is trying to do something too extreme. So when we try and do something too extreme, it's very hard to keep it up. So find sensible, simple health practices and just keep faithful to them and persist, and then slowly things change. Yes, well, medicinal mushrooms as a whole are very interesting. You may know that in evolutionary terms, mushrooms and animals, excuse me, mushrooms and animals separated from plants in the evolutionary line and continued together for quite a long time. So mushrooms are sort of like half plant, half animal, and have really interesting interactions with the human body. That applies to all mushrooms, so even normal edible mushrooms are very, very good for us. They should be part of everyday diet. As far as medicinal mushrooms are concerned, I mean, the most famous mushroom in the Chinese tradition is, in Chinese it's called lingzhi, in Japanese it's reishi, the Latin name is Ganoderma, and this is associated in the Chinese tradition with long life. So if you look, you go to a Chinese restaurant or a Chinese home or look at Chinese pictures, you'll often see pictures of the lingzhi mushroom. And in the earliest herbal books, the varieties of lingzhi were listed as the most important of all herbal substances. And that's because it can be taken for prolonged periods of time without causing any side effects to strengthen and nourish the body. So I'll say Ganoderma, lingzhi, reishi is one. Coriolis is another important one, and cordyceps. The closest edible mushroom to medicinal is shiitake. Yeah, exactly. So one of the great magical powers, if you like, of some of these mushrooms is that they can harmonize the immune system. And that's the characteristic of really, really valuable herbal substances. So yes, they have a proven record of increasing, strengthening the immune system in all kinds of ways, but also damping down an overactive immune system. It's really rather wonderful. So, so to sum up, I would say what the Chinese approach to YangSheng is that it's based on the understanding that we have one life. There's no philosophy or religious idea of some future continuation. This life is it, this is what we get, and if we care for ourselves, we really need to be motivated to enjoy this life as much as possible, to experience the best health that we can, to cultivate well-being, to age well, not simply to increase longevity, but to increase healthy aging, so we enjoy our old age and we approach death with acceptance and equanimity. And in cultivating our Shen, our spirit, which is part of YangSheng tradition, we don't just look inwards to ourselves. This is not a narcissistic or selfish approach, but we use our energy and our understanding for the welfare of course, our family, our friends, our community, the planet we live on and all the creatures that live on it, because at the moment the planet badly needs healing, just the same as human beings do.